Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the 2022 Ohio Senate race and why I think it'll be pretty interesting to watch, even though we likely know who's going to win this race. So before we get started with this video, feel free to follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm at UEP_YouTube. Follow my Substack. Just go to uepyt.substack.com. And yeah, if you want the full experience, I guess, to hear my thoughts outside of YouTube, follow me on social media, follow my newsletter, and I'll be, hopefully, if all goes according to plan, I'll be releasing some cool stuff on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. So we're just gonna hop right into this race. We're gonna take a look at why I think this race could get interesting, and I think I should mostly focus on this race, assuming that it is a Josh Mandel versus Tim Ryan matchup. Now, like, if you go to Wikipedia and you look at this Senate race, you can see that the main four that they have are Matt Dolan, Josh Mandel, and Jane Timken, and J.D. Vance. And so, I'll be real, and in the polling we've seen, Dolan's been gaining a little bit as of late, but I don't really see him winning, mostly because I don't think that he has the name recognition. Mike Gibbons was leading in a few polls. He's been leading in a few polls as of late because there's a chance that we see Gibbons get the Trump endorsement because Trump's not going to want to endorse the loser because Matt Dolan's been consistently polling quite low. Jane Timken and J.D. Vance have never actually led in a poll. Vance's best poll, he's mid-teams 15, 16. I think his best poll is right here, and then we've seen some polls that are pretty bad for him, where he's getting 8, 9, 4% over here, though that was decently long ago. Bernie Moreno left the race after he was polling the mid single digits. Jane Timken has always consistently got mid to high teens in this race. She was at as of late she's been falling, but she was at 13, 18, 15, 16, 10, 17, 10. 4, 11, 6, 8, 11. So she kind of surged, I guess, as you can see, in December and January, but then she kind of fell, and she's been falling as of late in the polling. Mandel's also been falling. He had the lead in a bunch of these polls. He had a stretch where he was the leading, and he was tied in this one poll. And then Mike Gibbons has taken over. And so, I'll be real here. I don't really know who's going to win this primary. It could be Gibbons, it could be Timken, it could be Mandel. I don't think J.D. Vance is going to win it because J.D. Vance made, he's the favorite of the more pro-Trump wing, I think, online. But obviously online does not equal real life, and he actually said some things about Trump in 2016 that could be used against him in a primary. Whereas Timken's a bit more, she's not moderate, but I think she's a bit more of a normal campaigner, and that she doesn't, she's, the least pro-Trump of the four, but she's still quite conservative. And so, yeah, I mean, Mandel is interesting because he's the most pro-Trump, I'd say, online, and I get that online campaigning is only a fraction of what actually happens, but he's quite pro-Trump, and he has he's gone against basically everything Joe Biden has done, but he's not getting loved by the Trump crowd as much as you'd think. So I don't know where his candidacy is headed. I think that he's a pretty bad candidate in terms of electability for the GOP, and I'll elaborate on why. But I don't know who Trump's going to endorse. I think it's going to be between Mandel and Gibbons, but I really am not sure because he'll probably want to endorse the winner, and he's not going to endorse someone who's polling, 4th place or 5th place. So we'll have to see what comes out of this primary. I don't really think it'll be Vance, to be honest, because Vance got some hype when he jumped into the race, but since then he's been not really. He hasn't really done anything, so I'm expecting it to be Mandel. I'll just say that it's probably likely that Mandel wins the nomination, but it's not for sure. And we'll have to see who Trump endorses. Now, just take a look at Josh Mandel's electoral history so we can establish him as a candidate before we talk about him running against Tim Ryan. I think we should go back to the 2000 Ohio Senate race where Mike DeWine won this race. He did very well, as you can see. He won this race by about 24%, and this is a big win, and it was on the same ballot that George Bush only won the state by 2%. So he ran 22% ahead of George W. Bush. Now in 2006, however, he actually lost re-election to Sherrod Brown by a pretty good amount. He lost this race by 12.4% when he'd won by 22% prior to that, or I think 24% prior to that. So the fact that he lost that much support, like especially in like the Appalachian region of Ohio. He did quite well in suburban Columbus, and he did pretty well in the rural areas towards Indiana. But he lost a ton of ground in the Appalachian region. He lost a ton of ground in working class voters. He also lost a lot of ground in Cleveland, because he actually, as DeWine in 2000, he won Cuyahoga County, as you can see here. It was pretty close, but he won it. And then in 2006, he lost it. And so in 2006, Brown wins this race, and he unseats Mike DeWine. And he did quite well for a Democrat in Ohio at the time. 2012, he beats the person we're talking about, Josh Mandel, and it's by a reduced margin. He only wins by 6 this time, as opposed to his 12.4% margin of victory in 2006. But he won this race on the same ballot as Obama and ran ahead of Obama, because Obama won state by about, I think, 2 or 3% in 2012. Brown won it by 6. So he ran ahead of Obama. He also did quite well, as you can see. He didn't do as like Appalachia was deep blue in 2006. He didn't do as well in Appalachia in 2012 as he did in 2006. But he improved in Cleveland. He improved in these areas up north, especially like when you get to Lucas County over here. Lucas County is home to the city of Toledo. You go over to Wood County. He did better in the northern part of the state. He also, I think, did a little better in Cincinnati, and he did a little better in the southern parts of the state that were close to Kentucky and those regions. And I think he also improved a bit in the suburbs of Columbus, although not by much. So Josh Mandel has lost a Senate race before. I get that Sherrod Brown is a really good incumbent. Like in 2018, as you can see, he won re-election by about the same amount. He won by 6.8. So I get that he did very well, and that Brown is a good incumbent, and he's going to always run ahead of other Ohio Democrats. But at the same time, losing a Senate race, no matter to who, is it's never good for your candidacy. So, I guess if we just take a look at the Senate race, where Mandel lost to Brown, I think you can kind of see the similarities between his coalition, if you remember that county map, and Brown's coalition 6 years later in 2018. But I mostly want to talk about what Brown did in 2018, because this is the gold standard of Ohio Democrats nowadays. I get that Sherrod Brown won by 12.4% in 2006, which I think is a bit misleading, because 2006 was such a Democratic year. And to be fair, Brown has only really ran in Democratic years. 2012 was a pretty even year, but 2006, 2018 were both quite good years for Democrats. And so Brown in 2018, he won by 6.8%. And winning as a Democrat in Ohio is always impressive. I will never, ever deny a Democrat winning Ohio. It's nothing short of impressive. And the fact that Brown won by so much, he won, as you can see here, by about 300,000 votes. That's a big margin of victory. It wasn't even a squeaker. It was a very big margin of victory. And 2 years later, Biden lost the state by 8, lost it by something like 800,000 votes in 2020. He lost Ohio by he lost it by about under 500,000. So it was it was closer than I expected. But Biden lost Ohio by 500,000, and Brown comes back and wins by 300,000 votes. So he overperformed. He did very well, especially in terms of counties, he didn't do it in amazingly better. He won Mahoning and Trumbull. He was able to win Ashtabula and also Lake County, which was pretty surprising. So he did well in the working class areas outside of Cleveland. He also did much better than Biden in the area in Appalachia, kind of the rural working classy areas outside of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and he also did quite well in Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton, and Toledo, which are kind of the downstate cities that fuel Democrats, because he won. He actually won Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is, by basically the same amount as Biden. So Hamilton kind of was the only region in Ohio that Brown didn't do insanely better than Biden, but everywhere else he ran ahead of him by up to 10, 15 points sometimes. And so for Democrats to win Ohio, they don't need to do as well as Brown, because he won by 6.8%. There's still 6.7% of room for Democrats to fall and still win the race. But what Democrats need to do in Ohio is kind of replicate what Sherrod Brown did up here, because I think this is the most important part of what Sherrod Brown did. He did well all across the state, and I think he ran ahead of Biden every county, which is very impressive. But the area where Biden did worse than Brown specifically were the counties up here. So Cleveland, like you've got Cleveland and Akron over here, which is Summit and Cuyahoga County, and so it's like, you know, these counties are kind of they're kind of working class. I don't think, like, they're working class counties, but they're not working class in the sense that they've been trending away from Democrats. Because when I say working class politically, I generally assume of areas that are trending away from Democrats. Cuyahoga and Summit County have both been Democratic. They've stayed that way. Now, when we look at like the 2012 presidential election, which was the last time the Democrats won Ohio at the federal level or at the presidential level, Barack Obama did very, very well in northern Ohio with these working class voters. And, you know, like, that's no coincidence. He ran a campaign that was designed for working class voters. Mitt Romney was a good candidate for the suburbs, but he was not a very good candidate for voters who were working class, who, you know, were living paycheck to paycheck. Middle class families did not really, they weren't really in for Mitt Romney. So, you know, Romney did not do very well in the northeastern parts of Ohio that are working class. Now, in 2018, where Brown won a Senate election, he basically did what Obama did, and Obama obviously was like an electoral behemoth. He won, like, he did better than Biden in most states. I know Georgia, Arizona are exceptions, but in the Rust Belt and in Ohio specifically, Biden ran like 11 points behind Obama. So there was a significant decrease in support for Obama and support for Biden. And so Brown was able to do what Obama did in 2012, and he like kept up Obama's margins in northeastern Ohio, which was very impressive. Because on the same ballot on the governor's race in 2018, Richard Cordray did not even do that well in northeastern Ohio. He was he was supposed to win that race. I think the polling data had him up by like 4%, and then he lost by 4%. And he was expected to win that race because he was supposed to do well with working class voters, and he ended up doing okay with them. Like, he did better than Biden and Clinton did, but he did not do well enough to win the state, because Ohio is now an uphill battle for Democrats. Like, they can no longer rely on a steady coalition of voters getting them to around 48-50% of the vote the way they used to be. Now they're going to have to win these races by doing significantly better and overperforming in the working class parts of the state. So in 2020, if we just take a look at the state of Ohio and what happened here, I just want to look at Tim Ryan's House race, because him against Josh Mandel will be interesting, because Tim Ryan was able to win a district that was fairly close. So if we take a look at these districts, the closest district the Democrats won was the 13th district of Ohio, which was Tim Ryan's seat. And so Tim Ryan's seat is, just for background, because I think it's important to look at the context, originally designed to be a Democratic PAC. It was designed to be a seat because the Republicans gerrymandered Ohio, and they designed this district to be a seat that voted for Democrats by like 30% just to pack them into one super blue district. And the reason they did this was to ensure that there are other districts, because think about it from a logistical standpoint. If you have a group of voters like the state of Ohio, it could be whatever state you want, but for this example, we'll use Ohio, and you have an area that is predominantly Democratic, and you're a Republican trying to minimize the amount of districts Democrats are in. You don't want to spread them out to make them influence 5 districts or 4 districts. So instead, the Republicans packed them into this one super blue district that Obama won by 32% or something. And they were like, okay, that district will be blue. It'll just serve as a Democratic PAC for the next 10 years. And so, yeah, this seat never went blue. But the interesting thing about this seat is that it got a lot more competitive than expected. This was a seat that Joe Biden only won by 4%. This was a seat that Republicans had a very real chance of winning in 2020. Now, they didn't win it, but it was fairly close. The Republicans got 45% of the vote in a seat that they were not supposed to be getting 35% of the vote in 10 years prior. And so, when we look at this district, I can't really zoom in, but the counties under Summit, Portage, Stark, Mahoning, and then Trumbull. And so, when we look at Ryan's coalition, he did very well in Akron or Summit County. Akron's it's very urban. It's a very urban city. Or very urban city. It's a very urban county. Obviously, most cities are urban. I think that's kind of not it would be weird if a city wasn't urban. It's a very urban county, is what I meant to say. And the Democrats did very well here, and they did very well here in the House race. He also did quite well in Portage. He did very well in Mahoning. The place where Ryan did better than Biden the most, he ran 4 points ahead of Biden district as a whole, but he did better than Biden specifically in Mahoning by I think 10%, or this portion of the county by 10%, because the areas that Biden really did worse than expected in more working class areas. Joe Biden should have been able, I don't blame Joe Biden for losing Ohio. Really, I don't. Ohio's a red state now. It's tough for Democrats to win there. But Joe Biden took a state that should have been competitive and lost it by 8% and made it look like a safe Republican state. Because he tried, but he was not able to reach out to white working-class voters who dominate areas like Mahoning and Trumbull County. These are often auto workers, steel workers who don't have college degrees but will consider voting for Democrats because in the past they have. These are, Bill Clinton, Al Gore, John Kerry, Barack Obama voters who in 2016 turned away from the party because they thought Hillary Clinton was not a good candidate. And then, they've never looked back. These voters might have voted for Sherrod Brown in 2018, but on the same ballot they voted for Mike DeWine, they voted for Donald Trump in 2020. And so Ryan, he didn't do insane with these voters. He didn't overperform the way Sherrod Brown did. But he overperformed by a little bit, and he did well enough in these regions to hold on and win his district by a little more than Joe Biden won his district by. And so I think that is good. It's not impressive. His win, he was expected to win by most. This was not an impressive victory, but it was a victory that I think is symbolic of the fact that Tim Ryan can't overperform and he can't win elections that are, by a little more than Joe Biden. So he doesn't need to be carried by a Sherrod Brown type figure. Now, it'd be nice if he had Sherrod Brown on the ballot because I think he'd have a better chance of winning if that was the case, but it's not the case. And I think Tim Ryan knows that. And he's from a district that's working class. He knows how to talk to working class voters. He knows how to do that. When compared to Josh Mandel, who's lost a Senate race before, to Sherrod Brown, to be fair, but he lost a Senate race before, and he's not someone who's necessarily done very well in Ohio elections. He held the treasurer position, obviously, but he in 2012 lost a Senate race that the GOP really poured a lot of money into, that they really thought they had a chance of winning, and they didn't win it. So, that speaks to me a bit about his electability. Now, just to take a look at the electorate that we're dealing with in Ohio. Ohio is interesting because in 2020, white voters in Ohio backed Donald Trump by about 21%. And the intriguing thing about this is that in 2018, in the Senate race, if we look at race exit polls, white voters only backed Renacci by 6. Renacci won white voters like Trump did, but he didn't win them by 21%. He won them by 6%. When we look at the counties in northern Ohio that Ryan needs to do really well and to win this race, they're often 80-90% white, and they're working class counties. So the common the common denominator here is that Ohio Democrats do well with black voters, they do well with Latino voters, they do well with voters who have college degrees, voters who live in urban areas. The voters that they've lost in the past 8 years are voters that live in working class towns like Youngstown, Trumbull, even some parts of Akron, Cherry Valley, the areas in Northeast Ohio that have turned away from Democrats. These are majority white areas that Democrats have lost, and the common denominator when they win races in Ohio is they do well with these voters. Democrats don't need to win white voters in Ohio. That would be very impressive, but it's not going to happen. In 2018, Brown lost him by 6, so it's still 15% overperformance. And if Tim Ryan overperforms Joe Biden by 15% again, and loses Ohio white voters by 6% or whatever, he'll probably win his race. It's not likely, but if he narrows that margin to 6% from 21%, he'll probably win his race. Now, I don't think that's going to happen for a few reasons. First of all, Joe Biden's very unpopular right now, which is going to make it very hard for Democrats to say, look, vote for us if you're undecided. And they'll be like, okay, we're the party of Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden, therefore I'm going to vote for the Republican. That's how a lot of midterms work. The incumbent party usually does poorly in midterms because they are not in favor. The party out of power almost always has more energy, and they always have that fire in their belly to take out the incumbent, to say, no, we are going to flip the House, flip the Senate, to basically have the country repudiate you. And so Republicans are trying to do that, and right now it looks like they're going to. It looks like the Republican Party is going to take back the House. It looks like they're going to take back the Senate. It looks like they are headed for a good night in 2022. Now, not for sure, but if we take a look at this race, that means this race is not going to be very competitive. I'm being frank here. I don't think Tim Ryan's going to win. I'd be very surprised if he wins. So surprised that it'd probably reshape my view of politics in Ohio, completely. And so he would need to narrow that gap with white voters by probably somewhere between 10 to 12%. like the goal for Tim Ryan, like realistic, like the worst they can do with white voters and still win the race in Ohio is probably about 10%. It loses by 10%. It's like 55-45 if there's no third party. And what that means is that he's going to have to improve with either rural white voters or working class white voters. And like you can assess that however you want. I think there's an argument to be made for both. But rural white voters are trending more Republican. They got more Republican in 2020. Joe Biden lost rural white voters in Ohio in a way that had not been replicated since like Ronald Reagan in 1984, and even then it was like fairly contested relative to what Biden did. Like Biden did so poorly with the rural Ohio voters that like I did not think it could get worse than Hillary Clinton in Ohio for the Democrats, because she ran behind Obama in rural Ohio by like 15% overall. And then Biden went up to her and did even worse. It wasn't really his fault. I'm not blaming him for it. It was coming. But Trump and Ohio went really well together, and it kind of corroborated that Republican shift that had been occurring for the past 6 years. Like Democrats, prior to 2012, sorry, I was talking with my pen, I just dropped it. Prior to 2012, the Democrats had not won after 2012, with the exception of Sherrod Brown's Senate race, the Democrats have not won a statewide election in Ohio. Like, they have done awful in this state without Barack Obama on the ballot, and it's not going to change in 2022. Like, you can, like, if you're a Democrat, you can dream about this, and you can say, well, maybe if this happens, we're going to win. And, like, I get that there are things to be optimistic about. Like, I get that Tim Ryan's an over-performer. I get that Josh Mandel is someone that has a tendency to lose races and, to be quite frank, say things that he shouldn't say. Like, he kind of reminds me of the 2012, I think, Missouri Senate race where McCaskill beat, I think it was Aiken, who made that asinine comment about rape, where he was like, well, rape is bad, but maybe God meant for it to happen. Like, comments that no one was really pleased with. And so he lost that race in Missouri, in a state that he should have won. And, it's kind of like that, because Missouri was a state that, on the same ballot, Obama lost by 9. It's kind of similar, because Biden, well, he lost Ohio by 8, and it's a state that's trending away from Democrats the same way Missouri was in 2012 and still is. And so Josh Mandel has the ability to create a scandal, and that's why I think the GOP are a little nervous about this race. But that being said, when you look at Joe Biden's approval rating, when you look at the fact that white voters have not backed a Democrat in a race in Ohio since 2012, it really says a lot about the chance of victory here for Ohio Democrats. Like, Josh Mandel could say something, like, really bad, have, like, a Todd Aiken level political... Like, Josh Mandel's political IQ, I don't really think it's that high, to be honest with you. And, like, I know that sounds weird. Like, I'm just being honest. I'm not analyzing him as a person or his policies. That's for you to decide, and that's your decision. What I'm saying is that his political IQ is not great, because he lost Senate race in 2012. The things he said do not, to me, seem like they're going to help him. Like, he'll say, like, I understand that he has to please a right-wing base in the Republican Party. I get that. And he needs to pander. He needs to be conservative. But when we talk about the fact that Josh Mandel says things, like, so insane that even a bunch of Republicans are like, hey, you can't go that far, that I think could be upsetting to the GOP. Like, I get that. He's not a good candidate. They'd be better off running Vance or Timken or Gibbons or whatever. But even then, he could still make one of those comments on the campaign trail, have it go viral on the internet, and have a bunch of Ohio voters have it be on their minds. And he'd still probably win by a decent amount. He'd still right now he'll probably win by like 4, worst case scenario, absolute worst, and that's that's a stretch, because he might win by 10. He might even win this race by 15% just because of how much trouble the Democrats are in federally. So I think right now my prediction is that he'll win by 10 against Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan's not a bad candidate, but he can't really do much in in an environment where the Democrats are in so much trouble. And so I think as a result of that, I'll say it's a R plus 10 race. Some give or take a percentage or so. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 9%. Wouldn't be shocked if it's 11%. Wouldn't be shocked if it's 8%. But right now it's just not a good time to be a Democrat. It's just Biden's not popular. The Democrats are down in generic ballot polling, and it's just not looking good to be a Democrat right now. So I think it's going to reflect in Ohio. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you find it interesting. Hope you learned something. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.